Everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I thought I would do a really fun experiment. So in a lot of videos lately where I have been doing comparisons between different modelers, I have a series called Just How Good Is the Line 6 Helix? And so far I've compared the Helix to some other software modelers. I've compared to the Strymon Iridium, to the Fractal FM3. And my conclusion's always been that ultimately I think if I was handed any one of these modelers and asked to make a production with them or to do a session with them, I would pretty quickly forget which modeler I'm using after I have my tone and just get back to the enjoyable task of making music and doing the work at hand. So I wanted to prove that to myself. A lot of times when I talk about these things, it's because I've done extensive research and testing about them myself before I give my opinion about it. Otherwise, I don't want to just be spewing out something that's incorrect. So I thought, how would it be if I kind of broke away from the scientific type of experiments that I do, where I try to keep things very much by the book, and if we're comparing something, we compare that one thing. You know, a good example is, I did a comparison with the Fractal FM3 and the Line 6 Helix, and I used a third-party impulse response because we were trying to listen to the modeling, and just the modeling. So the only way we could do that is by feeding it through the exact same impulse response. Otherwise, we have two variables. We have different modeling, we have different impulse responses. But for this one, I said, okay, let's see, for all those folks who say, you know, oh, the Helix stock cabs are the worst thing ever, you know, unusable, we need to have impulse responses, or fractals, you know, better than this or worse than this, or whatever it might be. And again, I'm not throwing my opinion out here right now. How about we do this? I wrote a little piece of music. I gave myself a specific amp type that I wanted for this piece of music. It's going to be kind of like an edge of breakup style tone. What I chose was a Vox AC30 top boost model. And I said, what if I had a piece of music and I recorded all the guitar tracks DI'd into my IK Multimedia AXIO just to capture a nice, clean, straight guitar. And then I reamped those through each of the devices, coming out of the amp out of the AXIO straight into the front end of each of these modelers. The Strymon Iridium, the Fractal FM3, and the Line 6 Helix. All with a Vox AC30 top boost amp model from those particular units, and one of their internal cabinets, stock cabs, IRs, whatever each one had. I reamped all of the guitar tracks layered that make up this song. I didn't go with multiple tones, it would have been way too much work, but what I did do is for different tones, use different guitars and different pickup selections to really mold the tone like that. But what you're hearing is the exact same performance through each and every modeler, with no effects from the modelers. Something like the Strymon Iridium doesn't really have delay, it has a little bit of room reverb, but doesn't really have a reverb that I would use. So what I thought I would do is capture the amp and the cabinets from the modelers, and then within Cubase 11, add just a touch of compression to all the tracks, all of them getting identical settings again, with the exact same amount of gain reduction, add a little bit of reverb and delay. So you're never hearing any EQ applied, because I thought that's the one thing we don't want to mess with. I want to just leave it as it's coming out of the modeler itself. Now, there is a second test today, so there's going to be two tests today. There's going to be a blind test, sort of listening to modeler A, B, and C, the whole track, and I'll timestamp those below so you can easily jump between them. And just tell me which one you prefer and which one you think is which. So one is the Line 6 Helix, one is the Strymon Iridium, one is the Fractal FM3. Now, here's the thing. I didn't listen back and forth trying to match these. This is where the sort of really non-scientific approach goes. But you'll see why I did that in a second, because of the second test we're going to have. So I basically just created, I started with the Iridium. I created my tones that I thought worked well within this little mix. Then I moved to the Helix. I listened very quickly to the Iridium just to sort of get in the ballpark of the general, you know, frequency spectrum. I didn't want to have one too bright and, you know, way out of whack. Although I don't think they're super close, but as they wouldn't be. Then I created one on the Helix, then I simply went over to the Fractal. So I reacted to the same track, the same guitar parts on each modeler. Kind of, you know, obviously picking the same amp model and obviously picking a cabinet that's in the ballpark, okay? And then I just did the mix. making sure everything was volume matched as close as I would get it. So we're not hearing the difference in volume, we're actually hearing just the difference in the different tones that I dialed in. So for that test, which is going to be the first one, I'd like you to listen through and tell me which modeler you think is each. There's going to be tone A, tone B, tone C. One of them is a Strymon Iridium, one of them is a Line 6 Helix, one of them is a Fractal FM3. After that, we're going to do another test. And what I did is I took these 3 different guitar tones and I used the Izotope Ozone EQ Match plugin. And I captured the sound of the FM3 tracks. I just chose the FM3 for no other reason than I had to pick one. And a lot of folks really seem to think the FM3 is a highly superior modeler. I don't give those opinions out. So I captured the EQ curve of all of the separate 8 guitar tracks that are on here, and I applied those to the Helix version and the Iridium version, and used the tone matching feature to get those EQs as close as possible to the Fractal version. Then I took those 3 mixes and I spliced them together at various points in one track. So your job in the second test is going to be to tell me where the splice points are in that mix. So you're going to be listening along, and anywhere possible, there could be a splice point where it switches from, let's say, the Helix to the Iridium, or the Helix to the FM3, or the FM3 to the Iridium, or any order. It's a pretty brutal test, but I'm kind of curious to see if folks, after EQing these to get as close as possible, if the differences are so noticeable. And just FYI, there are 6 splice points throughout the piece of music. So that's going to be a little tricky. I'm very curious to see what folks think. And again, this is all just in good fun. It was in a little experiment I wanted to do just for my own sake to see how I would react to these different modelers when used in a real world situation. And I thought I would share this with you because so many folks have told me they've been enjoying this little series of comparison videos. So without further ado, let's listen to the first test. So you're going to hear 3 mixes of this same song. One using the Line 6 Helix, one using the Fractal FM3, one using the Strymon Iridium. Not necessarily in that order. And then you guys can tell me in the comments below which one you think is which and which one you preferred. Okay, so that test is done. Let's move on to the next test. This one is going to be one mix with the EQ Match plugin coming as close to getting the Helix and the Iridium to sound like the Fractal FM3, and then I've put 6 splice points in where this mix changes from one to the next. I don't expect you to tell me which is which, because nobody's even gonna know for certain where those points are, but just tell me where you think the 6 splice points are, and we'll go from there. All right, what do you guys think? Leave me your comments below with that. So again, test number 1 is the 3 mixes all using just sort of my reactionary dialing into each of these modelers and creating a mix from them, all processed exactly the same except for the modeler and stock cab. So tell me which you think is which. Is, you know, tone A the Helix? Is it the Fractal? Is it the Iridium? And so on and so forth for tone B and C. And tell me also which one you prefer. And then for the second test, tell me if you can tell the splice points throughout that mix where I spliced in a different amp modeler after applying the Match EQ plugin. Fun stuff. I don't want this to turn into big arguments. There always has to seem to be 1 or 2 comments on these types of videos where people think they're dumb, they don't like them. If you don't like them, don't watch them, move on to something else. A lot of folks do like them. I just love the civilized conversation we can have about all this. And again, it's all in good fun, and this was more just done for myself to just see how I would react to certain modelers in a real world situation. All right, guys, thank you so much. Later in the week, it's not gonna be right away, but you know, today's Monday, probably by Friday, I'll do a results reveal video and we'll take a look at my methodology and exactly what the answers are to all the things I asked you guys to guess on. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Please like the video, share it with as many people as you can so we can get better results from the voting on this, just to sort of see what the general consensus is. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for your time. We'll talk very soon. Ciao for now.